government officials meeting here in New Orleans today are pushing the idea of exposing seafood to doses of radiation. Now, promoters say the irradiation, as it is called, will keep seafood from spoiling and make it safer to eat. But opponents of the controversial process say it will have the opposite effect. Dave McNamara has a story.
Don't nuke our food! Don't nuke our food!
These protesters are trying to convince New Orleanians that the last thing they want done to seafood is to have it irradiated, a process that government agencies say will kill harmful bacteria and give the food a longer shelf life.
It's not good for you at all. I can't imagine why they would want to bring it to Louisiana.
The interesting thing about this is it's not food people that are promoting this. It's the nuclear industry that's promoting this.
This first-of-its-kind facility in Florida exposes certain types of fruit to radiation. They claim the process kills bacteria and slows the spoilage. Today, an international conference meeting here in New Orleans is promoting the use of radiation on seafood.
We've got to make sure, number one, that it is safe, and number two, that if it is the process, that we in Louisiana get on the leading edge of the technology.
Both sides in this debate over food irradiation accuse the other of distorting the issues, of misleading the public with claims that aren't backed by scientific facts.
The federal government has approved a technology without proving that it's safe first. That's scary to me.
People were just as afraid of pasteurized milk and said, you know, this is going to be terrible and it's going to ruin the milk.
Irradiation is already used in this country on some meats, fruits, vegetables, and spices. The government is considering approval for poultry, and the irradiation industry is now setting its sights on seafood. But overcoming public opinion about irradiated food may be the biggest obstacle facing Louisiana seafood companies who may want to use the process.
20 years ago, people said that microwaves would never make it in the American households. Well, my mother said that too, and she has 2 microwaves right now.
The FDA will still have to approve irradiation for use on seafood before it can be done here in the United States. And while supporters of the process are now trying to convince the government that it's okay, opponents seem to be concentrating their efforts on public opinion. They feel if consumers won't buy it, then food companies will be reluctant to use that process. Bill?
Dave, if you and I went out to dinner tonight and they set a fish in front of you that had been irradiated, would you eat it?
Oh, gosh.
Just from what you've
from what I've heard today, well, I can tell you, it's a process that has been used in many countries. It's being used on seafood in the Netherlands, I'm told, and there is very little evidence.
I'll do the same thing I do to politicians. Would you eat it? Answer the question.
Depends on how it was cooked, Bill.
Good answer.
In other news, the thought of radiation conjures up fear in the minds of many people.
Some people want to expose Louisiana seafood to radiation as a way to kill bacteria and give it a longer shelf life. Now, the idea of irradiating seafood is a controversial subject in New Orleans today. 6 News environmental reporter Jared Breaux has been looking into the matter, and he joins us from the newsroom. Jared?
Well, Norman and Lynn, indeed, the question brought to town today is, can you make seafood safer to eat by exposing it to radiation? But it also poses the question of whether scientific belief will outweigh consumer perception.
Louisiana prides itself on fresh seafood. In recent years, oysters have received some bad publicity because of a bacteria occasionally found in them. Some scientists say all seafood can be protected from that bacteria if it is treated with radiation. This international conference has come to New Orleans to encourage seafood irradiation.
And it's a process that has been shown over the last 40 years to be absolutely safe in foods.
Don't nuke our food! Don't nuke our food!
This group of protesters rallied outside the conference. They say the seafood industry in Alaska and Florida has already said no to irradiation, and they say Louisiana should do the same.
What we want you to do is call and say you don't want your food fooled with, because once it is, it's going to ruin the seafood industry in Louisiana because it can no longer be considered fresh.
The Food and Drug Administration has already approved using radiation to kill bacteria in food. But if this seafood is treated with radiation, it must be classified as processed food. It can no longer be called fresh seafood. Several states and several countries have already banned this process.
Because they're not able to do this technology anyplace else, they are not welcome. They want to come to Louisiana. It's like we are truly the dumping ground of the nation.
Many people in the Louisiana seafood industry have been convinced that the process is not harmful to the seafood or to the people who will eat it. question in their mind is one of money.
There's still a basic question of consumers' trust, because you can get it to the people, but will they buy it?
Those in favor of irradiation say it will keep people from getting food poisoning or even dying from eating bad seafood. Opponents question whether irradiation will lead to illness or even death in those who consume the treated seafood.
The Louisiana Department of Agriculture is being encouraged to use irradiation in their seafood, and the encouragement is coming from the U.S. Army. An Army spokesman today said the troops would much rather eat shrimp than beef stew, and they think that irradiation may be one way to preserve the seafood in the field. Norman, Lynn?
Jared, food irradiation is being used elsewhere, isn't it?
Yes, it is. There is one irradiation plant now in Florida, and they're using the radiation process on strawberries. We are told that those strawberries are being sold commercially, but we're getting mixed answers on just how well the produce is being accepted by the consumer.
All right, Jared Breaux with that report.
An effort to begin irradiating seafood has some people up in arms. Protesters marched in New Orleans yesterday voicing their opposition to what they call an unacceptable plan to zap Louisiana seafood with nuclear radiation. The plan is being looked at by the International Conference on Seafood Irradiation meeting this week in New Orleans. Michael Colby of Food and Water Incorporated says irradiation would make it virtually impossible for seafood processors to market their product.
Secondly, if they approve it, the rulings on the books dictate that seafood exposed to radiation cannot be called fresh. Can you imagine trying to sell Louisiana seafood to consumers around this country as not fresh from Louisiana and exposed to radiation? Good luck.
Supporters of seafood irradiation say the process will solve the sanitary problems sometimes associated with seafood.